Okay, so tonight we're going through this basic nested forms lab. And as we're going through this, feel free to throw out any questions you have into the chat window or throw them out over your mic. Unmute yourself if you can and feel like it. Either way works just fine. I do get sometimes tunnel vision into the code editor that you see being shared right now, and I don't look over to where the chat window is on my other screen. So if you do throw something in the chat and I don't answer right away or for many minutes, I promise I'll get to it. I just need to look back at that window and forget to sometimes. So I do my best to remember to do that. Before we get going tonight, I do want to get a grasp and a feeling of where everybody's at. So just let me know, throw it in the chat or throw it out over, speak up over your microphone. Are you before this lab? Have you done this lab, or are you after this lab? Have you finished it?
I'm after.
I'm after as well.
Me too, although I've backed up and I'm redoing a bunch of labs. So I'm both after and before.
Okay, cool. So looks like everybody's done this lab at least once, whether it was clear or not when you were done with it is probably a different story. And that's why you're here. But because everybody seems to, or has said that they're past it, I'm gonna tap some of you as we go to get some of this code. And yeah, let's work on this together as a group more than me just, writing it out in a stream of consciousness, talking as I go. So yeah, cool. Let's look at the README. I guess I have it on my browser. It'll be easier to see, or we'll have it in the browser right now. And make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Cool. So the objectives: construct a nested params hash with data about the primary object and it belongs to and has many association. Name form inputs correctly to create a nested params hash with belongs to and has many associated data. Define a conventional association writer for the primary model to properly instantiate associations based on the nested params association data. That's quite the mouthful for number 3. Define a custom association writer for the primary model to properly instantiate associations with custom logic, like unique by name, on the nested params association data. Use fields for to generate the association fields. This is like objectives that you can share with the world and be like, look at the crazy stuff that I'm doing through this bootcamp type of stuff. Data model, recipe with ingredients. The first data model we're going to be working with today is a recipe with ingredients. Recipe has many ingredients and a title and a string. Ingredient belongs to recipe, has a name as a string and a quantity as a string. Okay. The models and show routes and associations have been set up for you. Okay, so let's look at that. Always look at the schema to kind of get a feel for what's going on. If I'm stepping into an application or just one of these labs, and that typically, if things have been run already and it looks like they've been set up by looking at the migrations, okay, we have our ingredients with a name and a quantity. They're both strings. And we have an integer for the recipe ID, which is the belongs to. And then some date times that are just thrown in there by the migration. And then recipe has a title, also with a couple date times for when these things were created and updated. So that's good. All right. Anything in the seeds? No. So I know nothing's written in here, so I don't have to run any seeds. I'll rake db migrate just for good measure. Okay. Yep. Don't want to forget that one. See, our development database was created when I did that. I'm actually going to delete this test one. Or no, that was created when I ran RSpec. Okay. Some of these labs have a database in GitHub, and that can screw things up sometimes. I don't know, just something about the version control and timestamps and stuff I think throws it off. So if you ever run into a lab where just all the database stuff is going screwy, a good thought process is to just delete these SQLite databases and re-migrate and reseed and go from there. And sometimes that fixes it, but that's not the case here. Okay. I guess we only have one more line. So build a recipe form that accepts 2 ingredients, exclamation point. It should automatically create the new ingredient objects. And then we got a lab link. So, okay, let's look at our models, see what we got. I'll just close this for now. I'm gonna open it up later if we want to look at the tests. The recipe has many ingredients. Ingredient belongs to recipe. Okay. So like our README told us, our models and associations are set up. We just have an application, recipes. Let's see what. Start our server. And we'll also open up another window for our tests to run in. Can everybody see the VS Code editor, the text editor well enough? Or should I blow it up some? I always forget that it looks different to different people.
I can see it okay.
Okay, cool. If anybody wants me to zoom in a couple notches, just let me know, and it's no problem. Server. Localhost 3000. And then, what do we have? Recipes. I guess there's nothing on the index because we don't have any. Let's look at what's on new. Okay. Form, and then show shouldn't have anything because there's probably not anything in the database. Yeah. Okay. So since we need to build a recipe form that accepts 2 ingredients, so we're going to be doing our work today on this new form. And yeah, okay. We'll go from there. Let's see what our tests are telling us. Fail fast. Okay, first test. So this is looking at our form. And this could be one of the reasons that this test is challenging to some, that there aren't any controller or model tests, it looks like, just this feature one. What am I looking to do? Do this again, control, enter, there we go. And I think, what else might we need? The recipe model. So these should be the 3 files that we're working in, or wait, 2, new recipe, and our controller, recipes controller. We're not actually working in our spec. Let's have it open to help us out. There. I just wanted to close that tree to get a little bit more screen space. All right. So this is our entire spec. But this, it'll tell us all that we need, because if we're testing a form on the front end, and then we check if it's in the database, then we know that the back end has to be wired up properly. I'm just going to move these. Just makes more sense in my mind to have the model, then the controller, then the view. I guess that's out of order for MVC, but that's fine. Oh, there's a form partial. Okay, form. This is probably where we'll be doing most of our coding. Okay, so let's look at our first thing. Visit recipes new, which we looked at. Fill in recipe title with chocolate cake. Find input name equals commit, and click it. And then expect the last title to equal chocolate cake. Okay, so we don't have our commit button as of yet. So let's build that out. And that should just be, if our form builder is working correctly, is just a submit button. Find and click. Let's double check that. I'll open up. Oh, inspector opened in the wrong window. All right, we'll see what's in our form. Never seen that little icon before. Okay, input name equals commit. So value equals create recipe, type equals submit. All right, so the input name equals commit, which should be exactly what we're looking for. Input with the name of commit to click it. And that should create our recipe. We'll see if it creates a recipe or if we fail on the next step. Lots of errors, making me think that it's going to be missing template, recipes create, application create, app views. Okay. Let's see. So what are we missing here?
I think we just need to redirect, right, in the controller.
Okay. Well, I guess we need to do more than redirect. We don't have a create method right now.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But,
So yeah, we'll need to redirect. But yeah, we need our create method. Yeah.
At recipe equals recipe.new. I would say put recipe params in parentheses. And then go below that. If at recipe.save, redirect to recipe path, recipes or recipe path, comma, and then notice colon. Your recipe was created in quotes, or yeah. And then let's create a private method to do the recipe params.
Recipe params.
And then hold on, let me look at a controller real quick. That would be params.require. And then, yeah, the colon recipe. Dot permit. And then what fields do we have for it?
Currently, we only have one. We have
Name.
Title.
Yeah, it's titled right now.
Okay. Isn't it recipe title? Oh. Recipe title?
So it'll just be title. So we're saying that we already have this recipe object that we're requiring.
Okay.
These are the attributes that we're permitting on.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure because the test over here says recipe underscore title as the fill-in field.
Yes. So that is looking at this right here, this name.
Oh, got you.
Or
okay.
I guess this ID, recipe title.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see where that gets us with our test. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Failure on No,
because you don't have a recipe view, right? Or you have the new, but you don't have the show page, the template for show.
well,
Well, he's saying about the routes, right? So you have to go
Yeah,
to routes.
yeah.
There's a routes file where you have to specify what kind of actions you want to, what kind of URLs you want to create.
So in our redirect, though, do we need to have recipe path and then recipe in parens? So redirect, we need to pass the actual recipe, don't we?
yes. And
Yes.
I believe that's what's going on here because we have this missing required keys ID.
Oh, okay.
So it's saying it's missing the ID, which it'll get automatically. Rails will extract it from the object. But it's saying it didn't have an ID to know which backslash recipe backslash show backslash, the number to go to here. So let's see what we get with this. Okay, so that passed.
Nice.
And we should be able to see something happen here. Let's say spaghetti. That's a recipe. Not very complex. Oh, I guess it can be complex depending on what you do. So there we go. Spaghetti. Great. Redirects. Looking good. The show even has an unordered list here, I guess, for ingredients. So it looks like that's completely built out for us already. We just need to fill this form in some more. Any questions up until this point?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right. This is probably pretty straightforward as far as things go, minus just following the error messages and not having, a model test, just jumping right to the feature test. But now this is probably where things got a little bit iffy, or a little bit more challenging going through this lab. So let's step through this. So let's see. Failure error, fill in recipe, ingredients, attributes, 0, quantity. Capybara element not found, unable to find visible field, recipe, ingredients, attributes, 0, quantity. So this is where we're getting into these, these nested parameters, these attributes. So since we're starting with the form, we'll start with our work there. So luckily we have a form builder helper that we'll be able to use for this. So I'll get us started with some of this. So we have our f dot, and what are we going to call on our form builder here? To build some attributes. So we have a form for the whole form, and then nested inside, we're going to have another.
Well, the attribute, right? We have text field, title, fields for.
Yes, fields for. Very helpful helper.
I know.
Yeah, that's the point of a helper. But compared to building these forms in Sinatra or even just raw HTML, very helpful. Makes things nice and easy and will connect it all for us. And then we pass this, the attribute we want to build. So in this case, ingredients. And that goes into a block. Mm-hmm. And I'll give it an I, just shorthand for ingredient. And then let's get our end on here. Always make sure that I do that so I don't forget. Okay, and the first thing we need is this recipe, ingredients, attributes, quantity. So we're going to need a quantity field. And we know that in the schema for this application that quantity is a string. So let's create that. So we have our I dot and our text field, just like our title, with an ingredient, or with a quantity, sorry. Quantity. parameter. And let's just say quantity like that. And let's look at our form now. Okay, something's missing here. Oh, this needs to be equals to, not just the percent sign. Okay, there we go. And if we look at our form, this is something that I did throughout these forms to kind of connect it. Was I stayed looking at what's going on here in the actual HTML. I think that connected things a little bit for me better. But we see our ID, recipe, ingredients, quantity, with a name of recipe, ingredients, and quantity. So we're targeting our recipe object, then the ingredients attribute, and then the quantity of the ingredients. So we're stepping our way through this hash notation we see into how we're going to be not associating, but connect, or taking the values that we input in the form and connect them to our objects in Ruby. So we have our recipe, ingredients, quantity. If we're looking at our test, we see something a little bit different. Recipe, ingredients, attributes, quantity. So let's see. Fields for, oh, we have this fields for ingredients. However, let's see what our tests say before we keep moving forward in this, and we'll find out what's going on. Maybe it'll give us some more. Okay, I'm able to find visible field that is not disabled. So part of what we're going to have to do is, let's look at our controller. And right now, we only have a recipe object. So right now, we don't have this other object for this form helper to build on. So this fields for ingredients is going to need to have an ingredients object, or else it's not going to do its job correctly. So how can we build that object?
Or you just build it. Add recipes, ingredients, .build. Recipes, yeah.
Recipe or recipe?
Recipe.
Recipe.
Yeah, and it will be in the new action.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm in the wrong place. I was like, that's why that's plural. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, what is the plural? Yeah. Ingredients. .build.
Okay. Let's see what we get here now. Okay, so this is still looking the same. Let's see what our test tells us. Okay, same thing. So.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, this one is, you had to create a custom writer, right? So for this.
Well, we have to do something here in our recipe. I don't think this lab we create a custom attribute writer, but we do have to associate the attribute. So
yeah, has many ingredients.
it has many ingredients, and then we need our attribute.
Yeah, it's accepts nested attributes for, right?
Yes. Nested attributes. Oh, for ingredients. Okay, let's see what our tests are telling us. Okay, still getting that. Let's see what our form looks like.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, now we're getting recipe, ingredients, attributes, and we're getting a 0, and 0 is meaning that if we want to have multiples of these, increment that. So that's if we thought about an array, the 0-based array, it's going into the first spot, the first element of the array is going to have a quantity of this input field. And then if we made 100 of them, the last one would have 99 as its number. But Rails is going to automatically increment this for us so that they're all unique and it knows which is which. So let's back to our test and see what we're getting now, because I think we can find this and fill it in. So I'm assuming we'll get a different error now. Okay, recipe ingredients attributes name with sugar. So very similar now. Let's see, form, sugar quantity. And I'm just going to copy this and put name. I guess name can go first. That would make more sense. Typically, okay, name. There we go, name. And this is not for the quantity, it's for the name. So if we change these two things, that should give us our name. Okay, and yes, recipe ingredients attributes name. So here we go. Let's run this and see where we're getting now. Okay, now we're looking for our second one. So I think this is a place where some people do stumble. And how do we add our next one? So some people might recreate this fields for, however, we don't have to do that. Rails will help us out with this and build as many of these as we need, which is awesome. All that we have to do is pass it another object, another one of these ingredients objects that is built off of our recipe. So in our recipes controller, there's multiple ways, or there's at least two ways that I know of to do this. So the first way being, what should we call it? Just copying and pasting this build. And that will do it for us. The other way is, what is it again? And that'll pass us two objects. So if we refresh this, you should see name and quantity twice. I'm actually going to put it in here. Just put a couple breaks. Let's do before and after. I guess if it's before, the next one will be have one before, put them there, just so that things are on different lines for us in this form. Make it easier to see what's going on. There we go. It looks a little bit better. Let's put two breaks. Let's face it. So we can see our second input for ingredients. And we see that Rails has automatically incremented this and built out a second pair of our forms for us. So everything that's in this fields for is going to be built as many times as we pass these ingredient objects to the field, to the view. So the other way that we can, get back to our, here we go, can build this out is to use a times block. So if we say 2 dot times, we can either say do, or just throw this in some curly braces like this, and this needs to be times. 2 times, it'll build that object twice for us. So this shouldn't change at all. And this is great because if we wanted to have, a whole bunch of these, we could say, 10 times. And refresh, we got 10 of them. It's a great way to build a whole bunch of these fields very simply. Rails is taking care of all of the wiring up for us. It's going through and making all these fields for us. Probably just leave it like this for the tests because it's not going to care that there's extra ones. Okay, we still have our input that's going to get clicked. Let's see what we get now. Okay, still not there, but should be a lot closer. Okay, the recipe form adds ingredients. So failure, expect recipe.last.ingredients.map ampersand : quantity to equal 1 cup, 1 tablespoon. So what's going on here And if you've never seen this before, this ampersand with a symbol, that might throw you off. And it's a shorthand notation in Ruby that has to do with assigning something to a proc and some really kind of advanced abstract stuff that it deals with. However, and I've asked some senior Ruby devs, like, can you find me documentation on this so I can share it? Because students have asked me before and nobody could. So it's not documented anywhere for whatever reason. It was introduced into Ruby and just isn't in the documentation anywhere that I could find or they could find. So I did find a good example of what it does. So I can show you that so that when you see this, the more straightforward view of what's going on will make more sense. Under the hood, and technically it's doing something more complex, but the way that I understand it is just like this. So I'll just comment this out. So this is doing the same thing as if we said ingredient.quantity. So let me delete this just for the highlighting for a second. So if you're going to map over something and just pull off one of the properties, that's all that you're doing, you're reading a property, it's basically saying, you know, just give me that property off of each of these items. And so instead of having to pass something into the block and then call the property off of that passed in item, you can just call this ampersand and the symbol of the property you want, and it'll do that. So that's a little piece of Ruby that's nice to know, because I know people see it in things like these tests and have no clue what's going on, and thus it's hard to pass some of these labs if you don't know what the tests are doing. Because reading this error, you would say, you might be able to infer, you know, something about the quantity needs to be equal to these, but what exactly is it asking? So that's what that means in the context of map. I honestly haven't seen it in any other methods, but it probably can be used in other methods. That's just the one that I know of for sure. That's how it's working. So that should help with that. And okay, so now that we know what this block is looking for, looking to be equal to, okay, so it filled it in and it clicked it and it's checking the recipe, the ingredients on the last recipe, and wanting to see if they're equal to what we entered. However, they are not, they're empty. So what piece are we missing to finish this off? Okay, it has to do here with our params. What are we missing? We've added our nested attributes in our model. We've added them in our view, but we haven't added them to our, we built them.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Permit, it will be recipe ingredient attributes, right? As a, so it will be like title, comma.
Yeah.
I believe so. I don't know. Let me see. Yeah. So I think so. Then you have to see ingredient attributes.
Views.
And you just have to pass
Actually,
well, you can do the rocket, or you can do you can do either or. Yeah, exactly. And then square brackets, quantity, right? I think so.
and yeah, our other one, name.
Name. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going on is it's getting eaten up. There, I'll just jump down to a new line.
Okay.
And yeah, so we saw that Rails is passing these with these zeros and ones. And what's going on there is it's actually putting all of these nested attributes into an array. So we're saying that we're expecting these ingredients attributes, which are being defined here, ingredients, and since they're attributes, they become ingredients attributes. And they're going to come with quantities and names. Those are the two properties of these attributes, and they're coming in arrays or in an array. So if we looked at,
Question.
Yeah.
Would it have to be ingredients attributes, or does it have to be recipe ingredient attributes?
So these are ingredients attributes, and that is because we're already coming off of this recipe here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So we're saying we're requiring the recipe. So we got that part already. And then what does the recipe have? The recipe has a title.
We permit
and
that.
it also has these ingredients attributes.
Okay.
Ingredient attributes have quantities and names.
Okay. And that we get the ingredients attributes from the macro of accept nested attributes for, right? Or
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we look here, binding, we should hit that. Hopefully. No, okay. Let's check our gem file. Make sure we have pry. Test bybug. Bybug will be fine. There's our controller. We can put bybug in here. Run that again. Okay. So here, if we look at our params, we will see, okay, so we got some encoding, then our recipe. Right here is what we're looking at. And I guess it has all of them because I passed that many. Let me just copy this, throw it down here. So we see we have this hash that's being passed. And then, well, I guess they're nested hash values, not nested or not coming through in an array, but they're still in a list. So we have our ingredients attributes, which is the key, and that has multiple key value pairs, and each one has both of those attributes on it. I guess if I was gonna make this look kind of like JSON, I'll get it looking a little bit better. And all of these ones don't have anything in them because there's a whole bunch of extra ones. But that's if we look at what's getting passed in our params, that's exactly what we're looking at in our required params. So we see we have a recipe, which is at our root. So we require the recipe. Then we permit a title. So we have the title, which is inside of this first level of the recipe. And we have ingredients attributes, which are another level or the same level as our title. Then inside of that, we have a list. And that list contains things, quantities and names. And inside our ingredient attributes level, we have that list and everything has a name and a quantity. Quantity, name, quantity. And that is, how that is structured. So really, if you're ever wondering, you can look at what the params are giving us and kind of work off of that structure. And that will show you what your recipe params, your private function needs to look like. Is that making sense? That's similar to the adding accumulator and reduce, just accumulator, not necessarily adding. Yeah, like I said, sometimes I start looking at one screen and forget about the chat. No, sorry.
So, so I'm I'm following along with my stuff, obviously, and just working through this. You put in the bybug. Show me where you put in the bybug. You put it in the just under the create method, right?
Yes.
And then what? You reloaded the page?
No, I just ran the test because the test is going to submit the form. Like I knew the test was part of submitting the form. So I ran RSpec, and when it clicked submit up here, that's what we're getting. And that's why all we got is a title of chocolate cake, because this is the first pass. In this test, it goes here, fills in chocolate cake, and clicks submit, or the commit button. And that's where it hits the buy bug.
So, okay. I'll bug you after. I don't want to detract from this session you got going on here. I'm just trying to incorporate what you're teaching me into like figuring out what's going on with my stuff. So
yeah, and buy bug is just, I mean, it's just like pry. I actually like pry more, but it just for some reason isn't included in this lab. I think there was, some different people that wrote different parts of the curriculum, because there's a whole bunch of labs that just have buy bug and not pry. But pry, the reason I like pry more is because right now, if we can't go through iterations in buy bug. So when I exit, it exits out completely. Whereas pry, if I exit, it's going to hit this again. The second time it goes through. In this test, it would hit the pry with more info in it.
right. Like for instance, I'm trying to run a binding.pry and it says no association found for name whatever hasn't been defined yet. So just trying to figure out where I need to define that to get binding.pry to work.
Yeah, so the easiest, I mean, if it's not hitting a pry and you know that it's getting to that code, then just require pry at the top, and that will do it for you. I think a lot of these labs, there's an environment set up. I don't ever remember where to put it, but you can put it so that pry is required across the entire project, and then you just put binding.pry wherever you want. I don't ever remember where, how you set that up, so that you don't have to put require pry at the top of your files. But as long as it's in your gem file, then if you put require pry at the top, then you can call binding.pry anywhere in that file. And I honestly don't remember where. I think it's in the environment somewhere, or the config, or test. Might be in here somewhere. I honestly don't remember. It'd be a better question to like just ping Avi with and be like, hey, how do I get binding.pry in my entire Rails project? Where do I put it? And he would probably respond in 1 second and know exactly where to put it.
Probably in the application controller, right?
I don't think it goes in the application controller.
Well, I mean, it could. That might not be the best place for it, but
yeah, there's somewhere that it goes. No, I don't even remember my key combination to search for the entire project.
somebody is not happy tonight.
Yeah, I don't know. My baby is not happy. She should be sitting over there eating dinner. Like she should be completely happy because
It's all good.
Yeah, and it's pretty. I need to buy a new headset because it's really not that loud here. But I'm sure people have told me it sounds like children are like dying in the room with me. Based on
It's all good, dude. They're all...
cool. That's this lab. Wait, I guess I threw a buy bug in there and I never actually ran the test. Let's make sure that it passes. I was probably gonna be mad about this, so let's comment all this out and then run this. Let's see, make sure it passes. Not load such file. Oh. Okay. Okay, still not getting it just yet. Let's see. What is going on? Oh, it got all the empty ones. So let's get rid of that. And change that back to 2. Okay, there we go. Passes. Cool. So, any questions, comments, concerns about this lab after looking at it a second time?
No, thank you. All good.
Cool, good. Does it make more sense now to those of you who, are wanting some more clarity?
Yeah, I think I just need more practice. Just need to go through a few more times or a few more examples.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's Rails convention, and you have to do everything, wire it up the exact right way that Rails wants it, and it works. It's kind of just one of those things that we get from Rails that allows us to, just generate a whole bunch of these and, just add some params, and it's really, really well, maybe not really straightforward, but really simple to create these, nested attributes. And, the tiny little bit of code that we have to write to accomplish this is awesome, but it also comes with all that magic behind it where we have to do it the exact right way for it to work properly. So yeah, it is one of those things that's leaning more on the magic than on, being able to look at the code and understand what it does, which I think makes it a little bit harder for us sometimes to really, accept and understand, because we don't really know what's going on. We just know that it works if we do it the right way, which some people love, some people don't like. It's just one of those things about Rails.